The warm evening sun cast a golden glow over the dense forest, where towering trees stood like silent guardians over the land. The air carried a fresh scent of damp earth and pine, mixing with the distant chirping of birds and the occasional rustling of unseen creatures moving through the underbrush. For anyone unfamiliar with the area, the forest might have seemed intimidating, vast, mysterious, and full of hidden life. But for Lily, this place had always felt like home. At just 12 years old, Lily had spent countless afternoons wandering the outskirts of these woods, her curiosity pulling her deeper each time. She had grown up on a small farm just outside the forest, where she learned early on to respect nature and the animals that called it home. Her father, a wildlife researcher, had taught her to recognize different animal tracks, listen for warning signs, and, most importantly, understand that humans were only visitors in the wild. Today was no different. Lily had finished her chores early and decided to explore before dinner. She walked along the well-trodden dirt path that curved around the forest's edge, her old sneakers kicking up small clouds of dust. In one hand, she carried a small notebook, her adventure journal, as she called it, where she scribbled down observations about the plants and animals she encountered. But then something unusual caught her attention, a faint, high-pitched whimper. She froze. It wasn't the usual sounds of the forest, not the rustling of squirrels or the distant call of a hawk. This was different, softer, more desperate. Lily turned toward the sound, her pulse quickening. It was coming from deeper inside the trees, just beyond the trail. Her father's warnings echoed in her mind, never go too far off the path alone. The forest is unpredictable. But that sound, something needed help. Cautiously, she stepped off the trail, pushing through the thick undergrowth. The sound grew louder, more urgent. Lily moved carefully, trying not to make too much noise. The last thing she wanted was to startle a hidden predator. Then, as she pushed past a tangle of vines, she saw them, 5 tiny bear cubs huddled together near the base of a fallen tree. Lily's breath caught in her throat. The cubs were small, too young to be alone. Their fur was matted with dirt, their eyes wide with fear. One of them, the smallest, let out another weak whimper, barely able to lift its head. But where was their mother? Lily's gaze darted around the clearing, scanning for any sign of a full-grown bear. Her father had always told her, if you see a cub, its mother isn't far behind, and she won't be happy to see you. But as the seconds ticked by, the woods remained eerily still. No movement, no heavy footsteps, no warning growls. Something was wrong. Lily knelt cautiously, keeping her distance. "Hey there," she whispered. "It's okay." The cubs trembled but didn't move away. They were exhausted. Weak. Lily's stomach twisted as she realized the truth. They had been alone for a long time. Her mind raced. Cubs this young couldn't survive without their mother. Had she abandoned them? No, that was unlikely. Bears were fiercely protective of their young. Then the terrible possibility hit her. Something must have happened to her. Maybe she had been injured, or worse. Maybe poachers had taken her. The thought made Lily's hands clench into fists. She had heard her father talk about illegal hunting in the area. Though rare, it still happened. Lily swallowed hard. What should she do? If she left them here, they wouldn't last long. Predators like coyotes or even other bears could easily find them. But if she took them, would she be interfering with nature? Her gut told her she couldn't walk away. Carefully, she pulled off her light jacket and approached the smallest cub. It barely reacted as she wrapped it in the fabric. Its tiny body trembled in her arms. It was too weak to resist. The other cubs let out soft whimpers, their little paws scratching at the dirt as they moved closer. Lily's heart ached. They trusted her. She made a decision. With the smallest cub cradled in one arm, she motioned for the others to follow. Slowly, cautiously, she stood and began walking back toward the trail. The cubs hesitated at first, but then, one by one, they stumbled after her. Lily's heart pounded. She was taking 5 wild bear cubs out of the forest. Would her parents understand? Would they know what to do? She didn't have all the answers. All she knew was this: she couldn't leave them behind. And deep down, something told her that this moment, this decision, would change her life forever. Lily's heart pounded as she stepped back onto the dirt path, her arms wrapped tightly around the smallest bear cub. The others followed hesitantly, their tiny legs stumbling as they tried to keep up. She could feel the cub's weak breath against her arm, its tiny body shivering beneath her jacket. Her mind raced. What would her parents say? She wasn't sure how much time had passed since she first heard their cries, but the sun was now dipping behind the trees, casting long shadows across the ground. If she didn't hurry, it would be dark before she got home, and the forest at night was no place for a girl and 5 abandoned bear cubs. Lily quickened her pace. The walk back to the farm felt longer than usual. Every so often, she glanced over her shoulder, half expecting to see the mother bear charging after her. But the woods remained eerily quiet. The only sound was the soft rustling of leaves and the occasional whimper from the cubs. As they neared the edge of the forest, Lily hesitated. The warmth of the sun had faded, leaving behind a crisp evening chill. She glanced down at the cubs, who were slowing down, their exhaustion evident. The smallest one barely had the strength to keep its eyes open. Would her parents even let them stay? Finally, she reached the clearing. Beyond it, her home stood like a beacon, a small farmhouse with a red roof and white wooden fences, surrounded by open fields. The barn sat to one side, and beyond it, a fenced area where their goats and chickens roamed freely. Smoke curled from the chimney, the scent of her mother's cooking drifting through the air. Her parents were outside. Her father, Daniel, stood near the barn, repairing a wooden fence post. He was a sturdy man, his hands rough from years of farm work. Her mother, Sarah, was gathering vegetables from the garden, her long brown hair tied back in a loose braid. Both looked up as Lily stepped into the clearing. Her mother's eyes widened. "Lily," she called. "What are you?" Then she saw them. Daniel dropped his tools, his face shifting from confusion to shock. "Lily, what on earth?" "I found them in the forest," Lily blurted out, breathless. "They were alone. Their mother is gone. She hesitated, glancing down at the cub in her arms, "they wouldn't have survived if I left them." For a long moment, neither of her parents spoke. Sarah took a step closer, her expression softening. "5 cubs," she murmured. Daniel let out a slow breath, running a hand through his short, graying hair. This is serious, Lily. These are wild animals. They belong in the forest." Lily's stomach twisted. "I know, but they're just babies. They're too weak to survive on their own." Sarah knelt beside the cubs, her eyes filled with concern. She reached out carefully, brushing her fingers against the smallest cub's fur. It didn't flinch. It was too exhausted to resist. "They look malnourished," she said softly. "How long do you think they've been alone?" "I don't know," Lily admitted. "But they were starving. They trust me, Mom." Daniel sighed, glancing toward the house. "Lily, we can't just keep them. They need proper care, more than we can give." Lily's throat tightened. "Then what do we do? Leave them out there to die?" Her father hesitated. He had always taught her to respect nature, to let wildlife be wild, but she could see the conflict in his eyes. These weren't just any animals. They were helpless cubs. And his daughter had risked herself to save them. Sarah exhaled and straightened. "We need to call wildlife rescue." Lily's heart sank. But what if they take them somewhere far away? What if they don't survive in captivity? "Wildlife experts know what they're doing," Daniel said gently. "They can take care of them better than we can." Lily bit her lip. She knew her parents were right, but she had already grown attached to these cubs, especially the smallest one, who was still curled in her arms. The thought of handing them over to strangers made her chest ache. Still, she nodded. "Okay." Her mother gave her a reassuring smile. "For now, let's get them warm and fed. Then we'll figure out what to do next." Lily let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "Okay," she repeated. Together, they led the cubs toward the barn, where they set up a temporary space, a pile of soft hay in an empty stall. The cubs hesitated at first, unsure of their surroundings, but once they realized it was safe, they curled up together, seeking warmth from one another. Sarah brought out a bowl of milk, but the cubs were too young to drink from it properly. They needed something softer. Thinking quickly, she soaked small cloths in the milk and let Lily feed them by hand. One by one, the cubs nibbled at the damp fabric, their tiny mouths latching onto the moisture. The smallest cub was the last to drink. Lily held it carefully, watching as it weakly licked the cloth. "There you go," she whispered. "You're safe now." Her father watched from the doorway, his arms crossed. "They trust you," he said quietly. Lily nodded. "Yeah." Daniel sighed, rubbing his face. "We'll call wildlife rescue in the morning." Lily looked up, hopeful. "But they can stay tonight?" Her father hesitated for a moment before nodding. "Just for tonight." A wave of relief washed over her. It wasn't the perfect solution, but it was something. As the evening stretched on, Lily sat with the cubs in the barn, watching them rest. Their small bodies rose and fell with each breath, their fur still slightly damp from the milk. They looked peaceful now, safe in the warmth of the hay. Sarah brought Lily a blanket. "You should come inside soon," she said gently. Lily nodded but didn't move. She couldn't shake the feeling that this moment was more important than it seemed, that something about these cubs would change her life forever. She reached out and gently stroked the smallest one's head. "You're going to be okay," she whispered. She had no idea that this small act of kindness would come full circle, that one day, these cubs would return the favor in a way she could never imagine. Lily woke up before sunrise, her mind still clouded with sleep, but her heart immediately remembering the cubs. She threw off her blanket and rushed to the barn, her bare feet cold against the wooden floor. The air was crisp with the scent of fresh hay and morning dew. As she pushed open the barn door, a soft chorus of whimpers and tiny snuffling sounds greeted her. The cubs were huddled together in the nest of hay, their fur slightly matted but their eyes brighter than the night before. The smallest cub, the one she had carried home in her arms, blinked up at her. Its tiny, round ears twitched at the sound of her footsteps, and Lily felt a rush of warmth in her chest. "Good morning, little one," she whispered, crouching beside them. She reached out, gently stroking the smallest cub's fur. It was still fragile, but there was a noticeable difference. It was no longer shivering, and its breathing was steadier. Sarah appeared in the doorway, a warm smile on her face. "You were out here all night, weren't you?" Lily shook her head, though she knew she hadn't truly slept. "I just wanted to check on them first thing." Her mother walked over, setting down a small container of softened food. Scrambled eggs mixed with a bit of milk. "They need something more than milk now. Let's see if they'll eat this." Lily scooped the food into her palm and held it near the cubs. One by one, they hesitated before sniffing and then eagerly licking up the warm meal. The smallest cub was the last to try, weakly nudging against Lily's hand before taking small, slow bites. Her father's voice broke the moment. "Lily," he called from outside. "The rescue center is on the phone." Her heart sank. She knew this moment would come, but she wasn't ready. Sarah gave her a reassuring squeeze on the shoulder. "Go talk to them. I'll stay with the cubs." Lily nodded slowly and stood, wiping her hands on her jeans before heading inside. Her father was standing near the kitchen table, the cordless phone pressed to his ear. He looked up when she entered and held it out to her. "They want to speak with you." Lily hesitated before taking the phone. "Hello." A calm, professional voice answered. "Hi, Lily. My name is Mark Williams. I'm with the State Wildlife Rescue Team. Your father told me about the bear cubs you found." Lily swallowed. "Yes, sir. I know this must be difficult for you," he continued, his voice gentle. "You did an incredibly brave thing by saving them. But these cubs need to be in a specialized facility where they can receive proper care." Lily bit her lip. "But can't they stay here for a little longer? They're just starting to get better." Mark sighed. "I understand how you feel, but they are wild animals, and keeping them too long could make it harder for them to survive in the wild later." Lily clenched her free hand into a fist. "What will happen to them if you take them?" "They'll be taken to a wildlife rehabilitation center. We'll make sure they grow strong and healthy. When they're old enough, they'll be released back into the wild somewhere safe, where they won't be in danger." Lily felt a lump forming in her throat. It was the right thing to do, she knew that. But the thought of saying goodbye felt impossible. She looked at her father, who gave her a small nod, silently telling her it was her decision. She took a deep breath. "Okay." Mark's voice softened. "I know this is hard, but you're giving them the best chance at life." Lily wiped at her eyes before any tears could fall. "When will you come?" "We can send a team tomorrow morning." "Tomorrow?" That was so soon. "All right," she whispered. After hanging up, Lily stood there, gripping the phone tightly. Her father placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "You did the right thing." She nodded, but her heart still ached. That evening, Lily spent every moment with the cubs. She played with them, talked to them, and even read aloud from one of her old storybooks. The smallest cub never left her side, resting its head against her knee whenever she sat down. When bedtime came, she couldn't bring herself to leave, so she didn't. She curled up on a pile of hay with the cubs nestled around her, their tiny bodies rising and falling with steady breaths. She didn't know if they understood what was happening, but she knew one thing: this wasn't the end of their story. Not yet. A gentle knock sounded on the barn door, followed by her mother's soft voice. "Lily?" She swallowed the lump in her throat before answering. "Yeah." Sarah pushed open the door slightly, peeking inside. Her face held a mixture of sadness and understanding. "The rescue team just called. They'll be here in about 20 minutes. Lily felt her chest tighten. She had known this was coming, but hearing it out loud made it real. Sarah walked in, her footsteps light on the hay-covered floor, and sat beside her daughter. She placed a hand on Lily's back, rubbing small circles of comfort. "You did something incredible, sweetheart," she said softly. "You gave them a second chance." Lily swallowed hard. I don't want them to think I'm abandoning them." Her mother took her hand. "They won't. They trust you, and that trust will help them be strong wherever they go." Lily turned her gaze to the smallest cub, still sleeping peacefully. She traced a gentle finger over its tiny ears. "I wish I could keep them." Sarah smiled sadly. "I know." A distant rumble broke the quiet morning. Lily's heart pounded as she stood up and stepped outside. Down the dirt road, a large white rescue truck approached, kicking up a thin cloud of dust as it neared their house. The sight of it sent a wave of emotions crashing over Lily: relief, sadness, gratitude, and an aching sense of loss all at once. She stood frozen, watching as the truck came to a stop near the barn. Two men in dark green uniforms stepped out. One of them, a tall man with salt and pepper hair, walked toward her with a warm, reassuring smile. "Lily?" She nodded, her voice caught in her throat. "I'm Mark. We spoke on the phone," he said kindly. He gestured toward the younger man beside him. "And this is David. We're with the Wildlife Rehabilitation Center." Lily's father stepped forward, shaking their hands. "We appreciate what you're doing for them." Mark nodded. "You did the hard part, keeping them alive during the first critical days. That's no small thing." Lily took a shaky breath. "They're in the barn." Mark and David followed her inside, carrying soft padded crates lined with blankets. The moment the cubs saw the strangers, their playful energy from the previous night vanished. Instinctively, they huddled together, pressing against Lily's legs for comfort. The smallest cub let out a nervous whimper and buried its face into her. Mark crouched down, keeping his movements slow and gentle. "Hey there, little ones," he murmured. "You're safe. No need to be scared." Lily knelt beside them, her voice soft and reassuring. "It's okay, babies. These people are going to take care of you." One by one, the cubs were carefully lifted and placed into crates. They squirmed a little but didn't resist. They trusted Lily, and her calm presence helped them stay still. Then it was time for the smallest cub. As Mark reached out, the cub clung to Lily's sleeve, its tiny claws catching on the fabric. It let out a soft, pleading cry, and Lily felt her heart break into 1,000 pieces. Tears burned at the back of her eyes, but she forced herself to smile. "It's okay," she whispered, running her hand along its fur. "I promise you'll be okay." The cub hesitated, then slowly let go. Its dark eyes locked onto hers as Mark carefully lifted it and placed it into the crate. The barn suddenly felt empty. Lily followed the men outside as they carried the crates to the truck. The cubs remained quiet, but as the door shut, the smallest one let out a sad, high-pitched cry. Lily clenched her fists, fighting back tears. Mark placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "Would you like to visit them before their release into the wild?" Her eyes widened. "I can." He smiled. "Of course. It'll be a few months, but when they're ready, we'll let you know." A spark of hope flickered in her chest. "I'd really like that." Mark nodded. "Then we'll make sure it happens." Lily took a deep breath as the engine roared to life. She stood beside her parents, watching as the truck pulled onto the road and disappeared over the hill. The cubs were gone. But as she turned back toward the barn, she felt something deep in her heart. This wasn't the last time she'd see them. Months passed since the day Lily had said goodbye to the bear cubs. At first, she struggled with their absence. The barn felt eerily quiet without their soft growls and playful scuffles. Every time she stepped inside, she half expected to see their curious eyes watching her, waiting for her to feed them or play with them. She often found herself glancing toward the woods, wondering if they were safe and if they ever thought about her the way she thought about them. But time moved on, and so did life. She threw herself into school, helped her parents with farm work, and spent time with her dog, Max. Though she still missed the cubs deeply, she found comfort in knowing they were safe, growing stronger, and preparing for the wild where they truly belonged. One crisp autumn afternoon, as she sat on the porch doing her homework, her phone buzzed with an unknown number. She hesitated for a moment before answering. "Hello. Lily, it's Mark." She bolted upright, nearly knocking her books off her lap. "Mark. Hi. Is everything okay?" His voice was warm. "Everything's great. I have some news I think you'll love." Her heart pounded in her chest. The cubs are ready to be released. A smile spread across her face. "Really? Already?" "They're strong, healthy, and fully prepared to survive on their own," Mark said. "We'll be releasing them in a protected area not too far from where they were found. I wanted to ask if you'd like to be there." Tears welled in her eyes. "I wouldn't miss it for anything." "Perfect. We're planning it for this Saturday morning. I'll send you the location details." Lily could barely contain her excitement as she ended the call. She raced inside, nearly tripping over Max in the process. "Mom. Dad," she called out. "They're releasing the cubs this weekend. I get to be there." Her parents exchanged warm smiles. They knew how much this moment meant to her. "We'll drive you there," her father said. That night, Lily could hardly sleep. Memories of the cubs filled her mind, their first days in the barn, their playful antics, the way they used to nuzzle into her lap, trusting her completely. Now they were all grown up, ready to live in the wild where they belonged. It was everything she had hoped for. Yet a part of her felt the ache of knowing she might never see them again. The days leading up to Saturday felt agonizingly slow. But finally, the morning arrived. The reunion. The drive to the release site took them deep into a forest reserve, where golden leaves blanketed the ground and the crisp autumn air carried the scent of pine. Lily could see the rescue truck parked on a gravel road near a clearing. Mark and his team stood nearby, unloading crates. The moment Lily stepped out of the car, Mark waved her over. Right on time. He greeted her, his expression warm. Her eyes darted to the crates, her heart pounding. "Are they?" Mark smiled. "They're in there, and I think they might recognize you." Lily took a slow, shaky breath as the first crate door swung open. A large, healthy bear stepped out cautiously, sniffing the air. It was bigger now, stronger, its fur thick and glossy. Lily barely recognized it until it turned its head toward her. Her breath caught. One by one, the other cubs emerged, blinking at the sunlight, their noses twitching. They hesitated for a moment, scanning their surroundings. Then something shifted. Their eyes locked onto Lily, and her heart clenched. The smallest cub, now much bigger than before, let out a soft, familiar whimper. It took a tentative step forward. Then another. Lily crouched down, her hands trembling. "Hey, babies," she whispered. The cub let out a soft huff and, to everyone's surprise, rushed toward her. Gasps echoed around her, but Lily didn't move. She knew. She knew they remembered. The once small cub stopped just inches away and lifted its nose to her outstretched hand. For a moment, time stood still. Then it nuzzled her palm. Tears spilled down Lily's cheeks. "You remember me, don't you?" The other cubs hesitated before slowly approaching, their massive bodies moving with careful grace. One by one, they sniffed her, nudging her arms, their way of saying thank you. Mark's voice was thick with emotion. "I've never seen anything like this." Neither had Lily. The moment felt unreal, like a dream she never wanted to wake up from. She had heard before that animals never truly forget kindness, but experiencing it firsthand was something entirely different. The cubs who had once fit in her arms were now nearly full-grown bears. Yet, despite their size, they showed the same affection they had when they were small. Lily gently ran her fingers over the thick fur of the smallest one, feeling the warmth of its breath against her hand. "You're all so big now," she murmured, her voice trembling with emotion. The largest of the cubs lifted its head, looking toward the distant trees as if sensing something. One by one, the others followed its gaze. It was time. Lily knew this moment couldn't last forever. No matter how much she wanted to hold on to them, they had a new life waiting for them beyond the clearing. She took a deep breath and stepped back. "Go on," she said softly. "This is your home now." The cubs hesitated, glancing at her as if waiting for reassurance. Lily forced a smile and nodded. One by one, they turned toward the dense trees ahead. The golden forest stretched endlessly before them, a world of adventure and freedom awaiting their arrival. They moved forward, padding slowly into the wilderness. The smallest one was the last to leave. It paused at the edge of the trees, glancing back at Lily one final time. A soft huff escaped its throat, almost like a farewell. Lily swallowed the lump in her throat. "Goodbye, my babies." With that, the cub turned and disappeared into the forest. A heavy silence followed. The only sound was the rustling of leaves as the wind carried them away. Mark placed a hand on her shoulder. "You gave them a second chance at life, Lily. And they won't forget it." Lily nodded, wiping the tears from her cheeks. As she stared into the forest, a strange but powerful thought settled in her heart. This wasn't the end of their story. Something told her that one day, in a way she couldn't yet imagine, they would return. Years had passed since that unforgettable day in the forest. Lily had grown from a small-town farm girl into a young woman with dreams bigger than the rolling hills of her hometown. She had left for college, studying wildlife conservation, inspired by the very cubs she had once saved. But no matter where she went or how much time passed, she never forgot them. She often wondered if they were still out there, strong, thriving, ruling the wild as they were meant to. Would they remember her? Had they completely returned to their instincts, leaving behind the past? She never expected an answer. But then, on one cold autumn night, fate reminded her that some bonds could never be broken. Lily had returned home for the holidays, relishing the crisp autumn air and the familiar warmth of the farm. The world around her had changed, but home remained the same, a place of peace, quiet, and distant memories of the past. That evening, she sat on the porch with her father, wrapped in a thick blanket, sipping warm tea. The stars stretched endlessly above, and the only sound was the wind rustling through the trees. Max, now older and slower, lay beside her, his ears occasionally twitching at the distant sounds of the woods. Then, out of nowhere, Max lifted his head. His ears perked up, his body stiffened. Lily frowned. Max. The old dog let out a low, uneasy growl. A second later, a deep, guttural noise echoed from the forest. A sound Lily hadn't heard in years. A bear's huff. Her heart stopped. Her father straightened, his face etched with concern. Did you hear that? Lily was already on her feet. The sound wasn't distant. It was close. Too close. Another deep, rumbling huff came from the darkness beyond the barn. The hairs on her arms stood on end. She knew that sound. She had spent months listening to it. No way, she whispered. She took a hesitant step forward, her pulse pounding so loudly she could hear it in her ears. Her father grabbed her arm. Lily, don't. But she was already moving. With careful steps, she crossed the yard toward the edge of the woods, her breath visible in the cold night air. Then she saw them. 5 massive figures stood just beyond the tree line. Their dark shapes blended into the night, but their towering forms were unmistakable. Bears, full-grown, powerful, and intimidating. And yet, they didn't move like wild bears. They stood still. Watching. Waiting. Lily swallowed hard, her heart hammering against her ribs. No way, she whispered again, barely able to process what she was seeing. The largest bear took a step forward, its heavy paws crunching against the fallen leaves. That's when she saw it. The scar above its eye. A scar she knew. Her breath hitched. It was them. Her cubs. They had come back. A wave of emotions crashed over her, shock, disbelief, joy, and an overwhelming sense of wonder. The smallest bear, the one who had always clung to her the most, let out a low, familiar whimper. Lily took a shaky step forward. "It's you," she whispered, her voice breaking. The bear responded with a soft huff, its massive head tilting slightly, just as it had done years ago when seeking comfort from her. Her father stood frozen on the porch, too stunned to speak. Even Max, usually defensive around wild animals, remained silent as if he, too, understood something incredible was happening. Lily moved closer, her pulse racing. Every survival instinct told her to be afraid, but she wasn't. They had remembered her. Even after all these years, tears welled in her eyes as she took another step. "You really came back," she murmured. The bears didn't move aggressively. They didn't growl or show signs of fear. They simply stood there, as if checking on her, as if making sure she was still here, still safe. Then, as if on cue, the largest bear, once the most timid cub, let out a final huff before turning back toward the woods. One by one, the others followed. But just before disappearing into the darkness, the smallest one, the one who had always clung to her the longest, paused. For a moment, it just stood there, staring at her. And then, in the gentlest, most human-like movement, it dipped its head, a silent thank you, a promise, and then it was gone. Lily stood frozen in place long after they had vanished into the night. Tears streamed down her cheeks, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming realization that the love she had given them had never been forgotten. Somewhere deep in their wild hearts, they had remembered. Her father finally stepped up beside her, his voice barely above a whisper. "I don't think I've ever seen anything like that in my life." Lily wiped her tears, a soft smile spreading across her lips. "Neither have I." Her father let out a deep breath, shaking his head in disbelief. "They remembered you." Lily nodded. "Yeah, they did." She didn't know if they would ever return again. Maybe this was her final goodbye, a way of showing her that they were okay, that they had never forgotten what she did for them. But something deep inside her told her this wasn't the last time. Some bonds could never be broken. And some promises, though unspoken, were meant to last a lifetime. The wind rustled through the trees, carrying with it the echoes of an unbreakable connection, a bond that neither time nor distance could erase. Lily glanced back at the woods one last time before stepping onto the porch, the warmth of her father's presence grounding her in the moment. As she sat back down, cradling her cup of tea, she smiled to herself. No matter where life took her, she knew that somewhere out there, in the vast and wild forest, 5 bears still carried a part of her with them, just as she carried them in her heart. The story of that one fateful rescue had come full circle. And in that moment, she knew she had never truly said goodbye. Because love, in its purest form, always finds a way back.